Welcome to the Modern Husbands podcast, where any combination of Dr. Bruce Ross, Christian Sherrill, and Brian Page host national experts who share winning ideas to manage money and the home as a team. I'm Brian Page, founder of Modern Husbands. Sometimes our listeners want more support than a podcast can give, individual or couple support, which I provide as an accredited financial counselor and fair play facilitator. Details can be found at modernhusbands.com. Today's guest is Dr. Sheehan Fisher, an associate professor at Northwestern University, with a research specialization in understanding mothers and fathers' unique contributions to the family and child health. In our conversation, Dr. Fisher discusses the dynamics of parenting, particularly focusing on the roles of fathers and the societal pressures faced by mothers. The discussion also highlights strategies for teamwork in parenting and how to navigate life transitions while maintaining relationship satisfaction. Enjoy the show. Dr. Fisher, excited that you're joining us from the Windy City at Northwestern University. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So, Dr. Ross and I are really obviously thrilled to have a conversation today about essentially how to operate as a team, particularly when you have children. But I think that for our listeners, it's important that they have some context, not just about your professional expertise, which we shared in the intake, but really more about your family, because this is also personal as well. So if you wouldn't mind, can you share a little bit about yourself and your family?
Oh, well, I'm a father, single parent of a 6-year-old daughter, about to turn 7 soon. Primary parent, so like managing a lot of her life. She's a great kid that does so many amazing things. So it's been a joy to be living it in lived experience in addition to doing it within my work.
And as a dad yourself, how has your personal experience influenced your professional focus?
I think it's been mutual. Like, of course, I was a researcher and involved with this work way before I became a father. So it definitely influenced kind of the direction I was going into fatherhood. And I remember in graduate school, the reason why I decided to do this was I was like, I wanted to one day be a father, and there was nothing really out there. So I pursued that direction. But of course, with the lived experience of it, it actually does influence kind of how I understand parenting in general, and also understanding kind of how much it is about roles within parenthood versus about gender, and how those things can also work together. So it's really an interesting experience being a researcher going through it in real life.
Share more about that. You said roles, parenthood versus gender, and obviously with what we do in our audience, we believe strongly in lead dads, men like yourself that have a heavy hand in ensuring that their children grow up with a father who's actively engaged. And obviously you're an expert in that area, but you're also a role model. So what does that mean to you?
Well, I think that there's a lot of shared variance, a lot of shared experiences between just being a primary parent, between the roles independent of gender. But of course, obviously with the gender added into it, then it's actually more enhanced of some of the judgment and the type of pressures that moms go through who are traditionally in that primary parent role. So it's interesting just seeing what the overlap is of what the experience is like with the responsibilities, the pressures, even the what people call the mom guilt, but the different experience you go through, it's just being in that role, but how that then is enhanced based on the gender aspect of it when women are going through this experience and getting the external pressures that can be quite unique for how they're put that pressure just based on their demographic. So it's just an interesting experience as a researcher going through it in real life.
What give us a couple examples?
So I would say with managing a child, like there's so many aspects to it for the medical care. My daughter, she had a stroke when she was born, so she has a lot of medical care. Managing the schools, the environment. Like, there's so many things you have to think through. And so within my work, we talk a lot about responsibility and about that mental burden. And so it's interesting knowing like how much it takes to keep all that in your head and manage your career and manage a personal life and those things that a lot of times I hear from the moms I work with in the clinical settings. And so it's really interesting to see that angle of it. But of course, what I do see as unique is like the level of judgment that is placed on moms, even though there is, men go through it too, to some degree as fathers, it is still, I think, more enhanced about the societal pressure, societal judgment, the criticism that can be more implicated more against moms, and seeing the difference as being a father versus what I see within my clinical setting.
I'd imagine you're celebrated all the time for being a lead dad, shouldering the emotional labor, right?
I would say yes, but sometimes that is a piece of it. I think being a Black father doesn't always play into that, just because people assume you're not involved. So it is a mixed bag, kind of the type of feedback you get, and even just some of the shared experience too. I would say is like the level of people's entitlement to walk up to you and tell you, especially when my daughter was like a baby, they would walk up and say like what you're doing right or wrong. I was like, oh, this is what my patients have been talking about, where people will just feel that level of entitlement to try to tell you how to raise your child or their opinions. And so it is an interesting thing that once you start looking at intersectionality between like, gender and race and roles, all these things then play into variable experiences that people go through as being lead parents.
God, there'd be a fly on the wall if someone walks up to you with that assumption and for you to come back with the mic drop of, hey, let me tell you about what I do for a living.
Yeah, I mean,
That has
I
to be
don't
so
explain
weird.
myself to people,
And you
but
don't
I
do that.
also,
I would
yeah.
probably step in for you. I'd be your wingman, and that would be
Yeah.
so much fun to see their chins drop. Anyhow,
Mhm. Yeah.
give it
I mean, that's like just a classic. Do you know who I am?
exactly. I don't know if you know, but I'm a big deal. So what right now is something that, as you're experiencing this as a lead dad, that you want fathers to understand about maybe a privilege that they have as being a father,
Mhm.
and they can recognize that, and then a follow-up would be, what is something that women oftentimes are unfairly judged upon where men are not, and how, and obviously we can get into how we can better support partners that way.
Yeah, well, I think that one, our society makes an assumption that almost like biologically, naturally, a woman should know how to raise a child. So I think there's a certain level of higher criticism of you should know this already, you should do it right. And specifically, you should be giving up your whole life for this child, which I think is different than for fathers that they don't necessarily, that is a privilege. They don't necessarily get that pressure of you should give up your career, you should give up your life for this kid. They're expected, even if they're in the lead role, to figure out how to do both. Whereas with moms, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of trying to induce guilt about any form of self-care, doing something for their own selves, prioritize themselves. Any version of that is judged in such a severe way that I don't think men go through.
What can we do to support, as women go through this, how can we show up in ways that would help them through that?
Well, I think one of it is, I would say, especially if you are in any form of a leadership role, be mindful of that. Like when you are working with your colleagues, stepping in, when you have employees, making sure that you get away from changing this system that really does demonize in that way. A lot of my patients who are fathers, we talk about that because a lot of times they are in lead roles, and based on them being involved, fathers start to think through like, hey, what are our policies? What is the unspoken policies? How do we start to change that as you have more authority and power to do so? So I think that is one scale of it, but also just being mindful of your own biases that you might take for granted. And even like, why are you judging one person a little bit differently than the other person? Being aware of that, even in the social world and in your day-to-day life, to ensure you're not enabling that sexist views that really disempower women and moms.
If you're in those positions of power, and I think even as professors, like, I mean, we have non-traditional students, we have graduate students that are parents and dealing with these multiple burdens, essentially, but multiple loads, with mental, emotional, time. So.
And even thinking about that for how you raise your kids. I think that sometimes people make assumptions that, the child won't observe some of these unspoken things, but just those little unspoken things teach that child, whether, independent of their gender, how they're going to understand themselves and understand others as they're growing up. So if we want to change the future generations, we need to be really mindful of how we raise our children, what they observe, and the norms that can really, it's almost like learning, you don't smoke around your children, not only because of the direct impact, but also them learning bad health behavior. That's the same thing that they're observing for even how to understand gender relations, especially in heteronormative relationships.
Yeah, that modeling effect is so important for young children, especially at young ages. They soak in everything, right? And like you're teaching your daughter how to really be a good parent, but also a good person.
Yeah, exactly. And that is optional if he wants to be a parent. Like, hey, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. Yeah.
So with your own experience, with your expertise, with your research, what strategies have you found that really help fathers manage the stress while balancing work, parenting, and their own personal well-being?
Well, I think men in general need to learn this way before becoming fathers. Like, men in general are just known to be bad at taking care of their health. They don't go to the PCP on a regular basis. They don't necessarily think about their good eating habits or drinking or other things that they engage in. And so in general, I think understanding that men need to be more aware of their own physical and emotional health will actually empower them to be ready for parenthood. Because all the more so when you're hit with all those different stressors, you need to be in tune with your own body and with your own emotional experiences so that it doesn't leak out in toxic ways. Like, one of the concepts we know is about masculine depression, where men may not always experience depression in the traditional way, but they're more likely to engage in like hypersexuality or aggression or violence or even substance use as a way to cope with their emotions. But a part of it is because they're not even necessarily aware of their emotions. They're not aware, you know what, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling overwhelmed or anxious or defeated. They're not necessarily having that emotional intelligence to know what they're going through, and then it comes out in negative ways. So I think being more aware can help them empower them, just even be able to assess what they're going through, and then learning how to have a range of self-care activities. When I work with fathers, sorry.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because like what role does self-care play in effective parenting and partnerships?
Well, like, I think for mothers and fathers and everyone, it really is that taking care of yourself makes you show up better. So let's say you think it's better to be a parent by just being there 24/7, never take care of yourself. Technically, you're always there, but you're not showing up as your best self. Versus if you took like an hour break or a half-hour break a day where you engage in self-care, and not just a cookie cutter version of it. Sometimes we have our go-tos where I'm always going to take a run. I'm always going to like do this one activity versus learn how to read your own body. Like, hey, right now I need some maybe physical exertion, but another day maybe I need a long bath, or another day I need something social or something that's intellectually stimulating. Learning to be more in tune with your own self will help you to tailor your intervention almost in a more productive way that allows you to then be refreshed and show up for that child. And it actually has a better and positive impact on the child. So learning how to do that strategically is really important for both parents.
That's really good. For our audience, what strategies or what examples do you have for learning to better pay attention to our body, learning to better pay attention to those needs we have in relation to our self-care?
Well, one of the things I always encourage is, for one, is try to get people to actually even list out their emotions. A lot of times people say the surface, I get mad or sad or whatever. Okay, great. What are the other emotional experiences you feel? How do you experience distress? Like, when you're feeling stressed because of work or life, where do you feel it in your body? Where do you feel it even emotionally, and getting better language to understand it? Because that level of assessment then helps the person then to know, you know what, this experience is real and is having an effect on my well-being, or is having an effect on my performance or my ability to function. Because then you can start to see how this emotional experience actually plays into how you're engaging in your world, including with your children.
Have you ever seen one of those? I'm sure you have. Those emotional wheels.
Yeah. That's a good start.
Somebody recommended that we put one of those on the refrigerator for our children. And frankly, I probably benefited the most from it, because I basically I would verbalize my emotions as something as simple as, I'm in a good mood or I'm in a bad mood. I'm happy or I'm sad or I'm just angry. And there's so much more nuance to it than that. And it's really hard to communicate with your partners or with your kids, or for your kids to communicate with you, if you can't accurately express how you feel.
Exactly.
Right? Because it's so much more than just, I feel mad right now. And I feel like a lot of men are that way, right? Like,
Yeah, language. I mean, this when I used to work with children back in graduate school, that was a part of it. Like kids who had issues with expressing language usually had behavioral problems because they didn't have a way to express what they're going through. But once they were able to use communication box or other ways of communicating, it allows them to be able to actually express a range of emotion and to be more productive in their behaviors. And I think the same thing applies to adults. Like if we have limited language to be able to express what we're going through, we go straight to mad or sad versus or good or bad versus actually a more nuanced experience of what we're going through that allows us to even work through that experience or communicate to people that are that we care about.
Yeah, I think, Brian, it goes back to that modeling, because you're not only improving yourself by getting at the deeper emotional level that you're at,
Mm-hmm.
you're modeling that for your kids as well.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Like, and they're seeing then a good male role model being able to express the emotions that he's feeling.
Exactly. And even just for them to know that it's okay to feel your emotions. I think that's one of the things that as adults, especially as men,
to feel your emotions.
like emotion is exactly like it's there. It's okay to feel it. Doesn't mean you get to act out. And that's the same thing you want to model. Like I can feel what I'm feeling, but still behave appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners have told us that they love the ideas we share on our podcast to manage money in the home as a team, but want more help than one episode can provide. That's why I'm excited to announce On the Same Page Consulting for corporations, couples, and individuals. Visit modernhusbands.com and click Our Services at the top of the page to learn more about how I can help you or your employees manage money in the home as a team. Again, that's modernhusbands.com. Now back to the show.
When we're talking then with, like, in terms of couples, what's another, like, I guess, evidence-based practice that you'd recommend for couples that feel overwhelmed by daily life stressors?
Well, I think that it's important for them to be able to communicate to each other. We make a lot of assumptions. We see the world from our own lens. So we assume, well, what bothers me bothers them, and what doesn't bother me doesn't bother them, versus really like learning your audience. Like, hey, we're two different people. It's okay that we have different experiences, even of the same stressor. How do we communicate that to one another? But I think one of the things, especially when we think about the parenting aspect, is that we don't do a good job of planning. And that's something that I have a whole protocol that's focused on this as prenatally, to have those conversations across the board of what are our values? What are we believing around parenting? What are the things that, how do we respond to stress? What are our communication skills? Like all these things that allows us to prepare before the baby comes so that you're on the same footing and that you actually have a plan that includes self-care, balance, collaboration, getting away from like falling to gendered norms about whose role is going to be what versus actually having a conversation and agreeing upon it. All those things together allows you to reduce the amount of stress that would exist postpartum. So it's really important for broadly speaking, communication, but doing that communication early so that you're actually working together as a team.
That's really well said, and I really love the team aspect of that. Approaching it as you're two different people,
Yeah,
but you're approaching it as a team. And so, I mean, continuing that, like, I guess with the work that you've done, what have you learned that you can share with us about how the mental load and the household responsibilities really affect relationship satisfaction?
Yeah, like that's something that people miss is that, especially now that fathers are getting more involved in the home, sometimes like, hey, look, I'm doing 50-50. What's the big deal? Like I'm almost or close to 50-50. It feels equitable for the actual task. But that doesn't get to the mental load part because still, usually the mom is the one who actually has the mental load, who has to think through when do we need diapers? Are we running out of the milk? Like who's going to call the doctor? So even if the dad is doing some of the work, the mental load is actually what causes that long-term strain and stress. And therefore that can create resentment. It creates burnout. That is almost like I call like being the CEO of the family. Like if you have to hold the whole mental load alone, it doesn't matter if both people are doing the task 50-50. That mental load also needs to learn to be shared. And it also helps the person to understand what it's like to be in those shoes. Like if you actually are responsible for certain aspects, you actually understand at a deeper level what it takes to run the whole show. And therefore it creates even empathy between the partners around what's going on in the family, what it takes to run the family. So to me, it's really important for us to start to move the conversation to thinking about the split of the mental load in addition to the split of the task, because it does play into relationship satisfaction. It really affects people's feeling like not only resentment, but also feeling misunderstood, feeling taken advantage of. Like it really takes a toll, especially in the early phases of that transition to parenthood.
So how would you suggest couples start talking about the differences in the split? So mental load, household responsibilities, and especially that non-visible labor, like the emotional, the emotional load, the emotional planning, those kind of things.
Yeah, like I know there's some like either games or like activities out there that exist that can help support that. I can't think of them offhand by the name, but what I usually do in a clinical setting is have them just write out everything. Like let's make an exhaustive list of what does it take to run the whole run the whole show. And once you write it out, then it's on like a blackboard, then you can actually see, hey, this is what it takes, like the nitty gritty and the big tasks. Now let's think about splitting it up. But also one of the things I encourage is getting away from cherry picking, which sometimes fathers tend to do. Like, oh, I like to cook, so I'll choose that one. And that's the only one I want to do versus, hey, let's make sure everyone has a chance to equally split this for even the burdensome ones and the nuanced tasks, along with the ones that you might enjoy, as a way to make sure that it's split fairly across the family. And then once you do that, you can also adjust. So if there's a time period where, let's say, the mom's on maternity leave and the father isn't, then you adjust. When she goes back to work, you adjust. The kid gets older, you adjust. So it's not that it's written in stone, but you are being agile so that it stays as an equitable split of responsibility versus it being locked in based on one phase of life.
The tool that comes to mind that has helped me and my clients is Persist. Because they have a care load assessment that's free, and it's a battery of 75 questions, and it simply makes the invisible work visible by quantifying the amount of emotional labor that goes into the task, the mental labor, durations for each task. And for people who've never done these tasks, whatever they may be, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And so that like makes it a lot easier to have a conversation about an equitable split that leads to what I try to profess is that it's important to have equal leisure time.
And it's important too, because when you split it, it takes a lot to run a home, run a family together. So when you're feeling burnt out and stressed, you start to no longer blame the other person. You're like, oh, I'm just stressed because it's stressful, not because this other person's not showing up. Because I know in sound mind, we did split this up pretty evenly. And so therefore what I'm going through is something that's a result of the actual like task, and allows you then to go to your partner as a partner, like, hey, like I'm stressed, you know, can I share with you, versus coming at them like, oh, I'm mad at you because you're not doing enough, and not really knowing that may or may not be the case.
That's such an excellent point. Nobody's ever made that point on one of our episodes. Yeah, that was deep. That was really good. I had never considered the fact that oftentimes, I'll just speak personally, the disputes are about the stress that we're dealing with of the task itself. But if there's no clear communication about roles and responsibilities, we misinterpret the origin of that stress, and we assume that it's the other person, not the task itself.
And that's a way we build that relationship satisfaction, because then you can go into that person just for emotional support and like acknowledgement versus it being like that blame, and therefore you become more united. And it really is something that I've seen clinically really go a long way to shift from that almost like being in opposition mode versus really being a team.
Yeah. And I want to tie it back into what you said earlier, just about some of those life transitions of with work, with having a new kid, or changing of like with moves or what have you. That's bringing a lot of stress too into the picture, right? And so is there a framework, I guess, that you recommend for parents to really strengthen the teamwork during those life transitions, when it's not always just the stress of the task, which is stressful in of itself, but there's additional environmental stress because of the transitions that just happening naturally in life?
Like one of the things I always tell, especially new parents before they deliver, is I discourage them about, we talk about role transition. Role transition in itself is stressful, even all the positive ones. So I say, like, do not have a baby, buy a new house, and get married in the same year. It seems like, oh, we did a bunch of positive things. It's like you just transitioned so many roles, and that psychological stress of now I went from single to married, or now I went from not a parent to being a parent, or now I have a new job. Like all those things take so much energy that you miss it because you think, well, I got a new job. This is a positive thing. And think about how much stress it takes to learn this new role, to transition even your own identity when becoming a new parent and things like that. It's really important to take that into account. So one is the amount that you do, but then also, even if you just do the one, it's then an opportunity to be able to, once again, communicate better. Like, hey, can I talk about just the nuances of the stress I'm going through? What is it like for me? What does this mean? What things I might need for advocating for support or for understanding? Like really that we can work together as a team to help each other through these different transitions. And sometimes, of course, being a parent, we're going through it together, being able to talk through like, hey, you know what? I feel inept. I feel embarrassed. I feel like I want to do better, but I'm struggling on this X, Y, and Z. Like for that to be a part of the conversation versus feeling like if I admit that I feel weakness, it therefore means weakness, or that I am not going to show up, or that it's going to be an excuse to not do my job, that therefore discourages people from actually communicating.
So how can they do that? How can they have that discussion without it turning into like a confrontation?
That usually, if there's that risk of that, you might need a little training, like literally from like a couples therapist. One of the things I always do a plug for is couples therapy does not mean you're about to get divorced. Like people do the same thing around medicine. Right. It's like we wait till we're like have almost diabetes before you actually go see the doctor or already have it, versus, hey, I'm noticing my eating habits are a little bit bad. Like how do you look at couples therapy as a way to manage your relationship when at some of these critical points versus it being when it's like a severe problem? So around communication training, there's a whole bunch of materials and training around that on how to communicate effectively. But one of the biggest parts of it is the listening part, is that when someone shares something with you, rather than getting defensive or feeling at risk or feeling like that the information is going to cause you harm, being open to hearing it and processing it together, and it allows the other person to be more honest about what their experience is. And especially in couples, like people struggle with talking about so many topics, even about sexual satisfaction, other things like I don't want to hurt that person's feelings, or I don't want to say something that's going to be embarrassing to me. And it really just leads to problems later on. Like a lot of the problems that lead to divorce could have been managed better by just having simple conversations earlier, but then it festers to a bigger problem later.
From your own experiences, I guess, what can parents do today to ensure both individuals feel, or both spouses, both parents feel equally supported, seen, heard in their relationship?
Well, one of the things that is useful I've seen for couples, and the frequency can be up to them, is check-ins. Like sometimes you do once a month, once a week. And the goal of it is not only about talking about all the problems and owning that side, but also, hey, I've noticed how hard you've been working to support me or support our family, like a chance to actually just connect on the full range of the experience, and also making sure that it's structured so that it's a time of like a week so that you don't miss it, so that you also are able to plan for it and prepare to know that, hey, maybe we're so busy we haven't had time to talk, but there'll be a chance to talk later. So I don't have to act out, so to speak, now. I can actually wait for the opportunity to have that time. Sometimes people build it in with padding where they might go on a date after or before as a way to make sure that you're in a positive space. So like depending on the couple, knowing how to pad that time. But of course, like I said, having the communication training enough to know how to have a structured conversation so it's actually productive. So there's different ways of doing that, but I think that's a healthy thing to do, because especially with kids, you get so busy that you can go weeks or months and not really had a real conversation, and therefore either upset about things or feel underappreciated because you not got a compliment in like months. So this is a way to kind of help to build that into a part of your life.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fisher, for all just the wonderful, amazing insights that you provided for our listeners today. For those that are interested in learning more about the work that you do, where can they learn more about you?
Well, of course, you can feel free to email me. I also have a website I haven't updated in quite a while, but SheehanFisher.com. And also I'm on Instagram at Dr. Chef Sheehan. So you can feel free to follow me there. We'll talk about like food, cooking, and about perinatal stuff. So there's different ways you can reach out. Feel free.
We love the cooking.
Yeah.
Dr. Chef Sheehan.
Yeah, I
I
even
love
teach
it.
cooking to people too, so it's a fun thing.
Oh, okay. So,
Do you do couples cooking classes?
I've done that before. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're a couple that needs expert advice, especially having children, there, do
Yeah.
a cooking class.
Yep. That's fun.
So you'll see a follow from Modern Husband. I just followed you. I love it. I
Okay,
love it.
sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, so final question. We always end with the same question, and it's something that we know our listeners appreciate because it helps them improve, is either a parent or as a partner. And so our question for you is, if you had to give one piece of advice to every parent listening about shared responsibility and partnership, what would it be?
It would be that having an equitable split actually makes everyone happier. Sometimes people think that, oh, I don't want to do more work. There's actually splitting it. You will get a lot more out of your relationship and be happier, even though you have to give a little bit more too. So it's something that I encourage across everyone to consider.
Perfectly said, Dr. Fisher. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Too much.
Don't leave just yet. Be sure to like and subscribe before you do. And a reminder to visit modernhusbands.com if you're looking for money and home management support in your life. Just click the Our Services button at the top of the page. Again, that's at modernhusbands.com. And many thanks to our co-hosts, our guests, and of course, all of you for joining today.